Talk about a crusher. Yes! Oh!
Are you kidding me?
And
Welcome back to the Schoolyard Sports Lane Frank podcast. I'm the host of this podcast, Lane Frank. Today in episode 4, we'll be discussing the NBA Finals as they are finally here, the MLB playoffs, and what a week it was in football, NFL, and college football, and so much more. So let's get into it. Let's start with our weekly headlines. Let's move right into the NBA as the Heat-Lakers Finals series is set now. The Heat beat the Celtics in 6 games. The Lakers beat the Nuggets in 5 games. Both series weren't really that competitive. The Heat went up 2-0 on that series to start the series. The Lakers went up 3-1, then finished it to go up 4-1. They're a pretty close series. We'll have to see how this series goes. Finals, obviously the biggest one of the year. We'll just have to wait and see who will be the new champion in the NBA. But next in the NBA, Doc Rivers is officially out as the head coach of the Clippers. They moved on from him. They fired him. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, he couldn't figure out how to get it to work. Maybe Tyronn Lue, a new coaching candidate who is their assistant coach right now, maybe he can get it to work for them if he becomes the head coach. Maybe they'll get somebody else like Brett Brown, another coach. We'll just have to wait and see. But Doc Rivers is now out as the head coach of the Los Angeles Clippers. But Billy Donovan, who was fired by the Thunder, is now officially hired by the Bulls. I was very surprised when the Thunder fired him. I thought he was a Coach of the Year candidate. I thought he could have even been Coach of the Year. So I was shocked when the Thunder hired him. I'm glad he's with the Bulls. I think he can maybe turn Zach LaVine into a crazy good player. Here he is a really good player, but I think he can turn him to like an all-star every year type of player. I think he can bring them back to the playoffs, the Bulls. We'll just have to wait and see. They have a lot of young talent on that team. I think Billy Donovan knows how to take advantage of that. Let's move over to the NFL now. There's another week of injuries, not like last week. But this week, Tariq Cohen tore his ACL. Michael Pittman is out indefinitely with the surgery. And a couple other injuries. And Jarrell Casey is also out for the season. Von Miller was out for the season before the season even started. The Broncos are injury-riddled team. Drew Lock is out. A bunch of guys on that team are out. Cortland Sutton has tore his ACL. So pretty much almost every player on the Broncos team seems like is out. But Nick Foles is now officially named the starter of the Chicago Bears. Mitchell Trubisky, he had a really bad game. He didn't have a really bad game. He was having a pretty bad game against the Falcons. They decided to pull him as they were losing by a lot. Put in Nick Foles. Nick Foles led a huge comeback win. The Falcons choked again. It's a Falcons thing, just like last week with the Cowboys. When they lost to the Cowboys, they choked that game. So the Falcons, they lost that game. Nick Foles got a great comeback. I don't think it was the right move of Matt Nagy to bench Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, Nick Foles got the job done. I think Mitchell Trubisky was playing well enough to stay in the game. But Nick Foles is now officially the starter for the Chicago Bears. In the MLB, the playoffs are officially set, and the Miami Marlins are in the playoffs. One of the worst teams in MLB last season. Many people are saying, they were like a double-A team. They're so bad. Yeah, the Marlins are in the playoffs. The horrible Marlins from last season, the season before, they're in the playoffs this year, and they maybe could have a shot to win the World Series. We'll just have to wait and see. It was a crazy week in college football. Kansas State beat Oklahoma. Yes, Kansas State, the team that lost to Arkansas State, beat the number 3 team in the country, but led by Spencer Rattler. That's absolutely crazy that they beat Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's playoffs hopes are officially done now. Not officially. I think they could win a couple more games, maybe try and get back in the playoff race. I don't think they can. That's a horrible loss to Kansas State. I think Kansas State lost to Arkansas State, an unranked Group of 5 team. That is absolutely horrible for Oklahoma that they lost to Kansas State. But that wasn't the only upset. KJ Costello in the Mississippi State Bulldogs, led by Mike Leach's air raid offense, beat the LSU Tigers, the reigning champions from last season. Miles Brennan had a horrible game, LSU's new quarterback. He's no Joe Burrow. He's not Joe Burrow at all. KJ Costello might be the new Joe Burrow. He broke the SEC passing yards record in just his first game ever in the SEC. That is crazy. He threw for 600 yards. KJ Costello had an amazing game, and he could definitely make a run at the Heisman. And that's about it for headlines this week, as there are a lot. Let's move over to Schoolyard Sports Game Day now, a segment where we predict all our NFL games for the week, most important ones. I was 4-6 last week. That was not good at all. Let's try and improve that this week, and let's get right into it. First game we have, Broncos-Jets, battle of the 0-3 teams on Thursday Night Football. I think the Broncos do get the job done. They're an injury-riddled team. They have a bunch of injuries. If Drew Lock plays, I think he will play. Philip Lindsay, Vic Fangio, the head coach, Broncos said he will probably play. So I have the Broncos beating the Jets in this one, as I think the Jets are one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. Next game, we have Colts-Bears. Bears, but close. Nick Foles is their new starting quarterback. Colts, they lost to the Jaguars in week 1. Jaguars haven't won a game since. I think the Colts, they beat the Jets last week, but that's just the Jets. I think the Colts with Phillip Rivers, I think they can keep it close a little bit, but I think they'll lose the Bears at the end. I have the Bears, but really close in this one. Next game after that, we have Browns-Cowboys. The Cowboys, their defense is pretty bad. The Browns had 3 picks last week. That's pretty scary. Their defense is really good now. The Browns, I think if Dak Prescott, I think if they can get him throw a couple picks, I think that would be it for the Cowboys. So I have the Browns winning this one over the Cowboys. Steelers-Titans, if the game even happens, I don't think it will. The Titans' practice facility was closed this week. The Vikings too, since they played the Vikings. But the Titans had 3 players test positive and 3 coaches. That's bad. I don't think the game will happen. But if it does, I have the Steelers coming away with this one. It's a battle of 3-0 teams. I think the Steelers will win this one. I'm not sure. I think Ryan Tannehill will have a pretty bad game. I think Big Ben and that front 7 will have a great game. I think the Steelers win this game. Next game, we have Seahawks-Dolphins. The Dolphins are coming off a pretty big game from Thursday Night Football against the Jaguars. The Seahawks, I think they're a bit dependent on Russell Wilson. I think their defense needs to step it up a bit. But if they can do that, I have the Seahawks, as I think Russell Wilson is one of the best players in the NFL this season. But the defense and a couple other players need to step up their game a little bit. After that, we have Chargers-Bucks. Tyrod Taylor is out for this game. Justin Herbert didn't have the greatest game last week against the Panthers. They lost that game. But the Buccaneers, Tom Brady, I think they come away this one big. I have 45-14 Buccaneers over the Chargers. I think Justin Herbert can learn a lot from this game playing against Tom Brady. But I think Justin Herbert, I think he won't have the greatest game. But the Bucs might have the best defense in the NFL this season. I think Tom Brady, this is a breakout game with the Bucs. Next game, we have Texans-Vikings. Same thing with this game. This game might not happen. The Vikings have to close their facility too because they played the Titans last week. But this is battle of the 0-3 teams. I had the Texans winning this one. Kirk Cousins, oh boy, he's bad. Kirk Cousins this season, horrendous QBR. His completion percentage isn't good at all. I think Kirk Cousins, I think the Texans D, there's rumors that they might sign Earl Thomas. I think if they sign him, they can maybe get a pick or something on Kirk Cousins. But I have the Texans winning this one because, it's at home for them. Vikings taking out the trip to Texas. I don't think this game will happen either. But if it does, I have the Texans winning this one. After that, we have Giants-Rams. The Giants, they're one of the worst teams in the NFL this season, losing to an injury-riddled 49ers team. 49ers, their quarterback was out, their running back was out, their main player on defense was out. I think I have the Rams in this one big over the Giants. Next game, we have Patriots-Chiefs. This is a battle between Cam Newton and Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes had a great game on Monday Night Football against the Ravens. I think Patrick Mahomes has a chance to win MVP this season. Same with Cam Newton. But I do have the Chiefs coming away in this one. Kind of like the Seahawks-Patriots game. But I do think the Patriots will lose by a little bit more in this one. So I have the Chiefs in this one by 10. We have Bills-Raiders now. The Bills had a great game against the Rams last week. They almost blew it at the end. They did get the win. But I think the Bills, they're one of the best teams in the NFL this season. I think Josh Allen can definitely have a chance at MVP. Derek Carr and the Raiders are also having a good season, even though they lost to the Patriots last week. But I do have the Bills winning this one. Kind of close. Next game, the last game, Eagles-49ers. If the Eagles lose this game, I think that's it for Carson Wentz. I think they need to bench him or something. Because if they lose to an injury-riddled 49ers team, I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo will play. If he doesn't play and the Eagles lose to them, if Raheem Mostert doesn't play, a lot of injuries to the 49ers defense, I think Carson Wentz doesn't do well against that team. I think that is it for Carson Wentz in the Eagles' career. But I have the 49ers coming away in this one. Let's move over to top 5 now. Today's top 5 is top 5 bold predictions for the NBA Finals between Heat and Lakers. Let's get right into it. At number 5, Anthony Davis will have a pretty bad series, I think. I think Bam Adebayo will be a great defender, will play great defense on him. I don't think Anthony Davis will have a good series in the finals at all. At number 4, we have Bam Adebayo having a great series, unlike Anthony Davis. I think Bam Adebayo, matching up with Dwight Howard, I think that's not a mismatch, but I do think Bam Adebayo will have a better series than Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis. I think Bam Adebayo will have a great series. He pretty much won the game for the Heat in Game 6. He had 32 points. Bam Adebayo is an elite player, I think. So I do have Bam Adebayo having a great series, and that's number 4. Number 3, it goes to 7 games. It'll go to a Game 7. I think the Heat, they can force a Game 7. I think the Lakers, I think they might lose a couple games, maybe Game 6, Game 3. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe even Game 1. But I do have this series going 7. Number 2, we have LeBron absolutely going off I think LeBron James will have an absolutely amazing finals, and that's pretty much shown. I mean, last time he was in the finals in 2018, he had 51 points in Game 1. After that game, he broke his hand. He said after the series was over, they broke his hand after Game 1 punching a whiteboard. But I think LeBron James will have an absolutely amazing series in the finals. Do you think he'll have an amazing series? Leave that in the comment section. But let's move over to number 1 now. Number 1, I have the Lakers winning this series. I think it's going to go to 7, like I said. I think it's going to be a really competitive Game 7. I think it'll come down maybe even to the buzzer. I think LeBron James, he could even come up with a game winner, buzzer beater, you never know. But I do have the Lakers winning this series, and that's my number 1 bold prediction for the NBA Finals this year. And that's about it for Top 5 today. Leave your Top 5 bold predictions for the NBA Finals in the comment section. Let's move over to our Did You Know segment now. Did you know that in the NBA till 1925, after every basket, the referee would do a jump ball? That's absolutely crazy. Imagine that being in the NBA today. I mean, LeBron James hitting a 3, then going to a jump ball right away. That's kind of crazy to think about. What do you think would happen if that was still in the NBA? I'm glad that rule isn't there anymore. But that's kind of crazy to think about that in 1925 NBA there would be a jump ball after every basket. Now let's talk about something. And let's do the contenders and the pretenders in the NFL. There's a lot of 3-0 teams, but let's separate the contenders and the pretenders. Let's get right into it. First team, I have the Bears. It's the Bears. They're 3-0. I have them going to pretenders. I don't think they're contenders this season. I think there'll be inconsistency at quarterback. I think Nick Foles will have one good game. Then maybe he'll have a bad game. They'll want to start Mitchell Trubisky. Then Mitchell Trubisky will have a bad game. They'll want to start Nick Foles. And the defense might collapse a little bit. So I think the Bears are going to turn into pretenders pretty soon. And they're not contenders in my opinion. Next team, we have Bills. The Bills are contenders, and Josh Allen is an MVP candidate. I mean, Josh Allen, 12 touchdowns, 1 interception. That's absolutely crazy. 12 total touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, 10 passing, and only 1 pick. That's absolutely crazy to think about. Josh Allen can definitely lead the Bills to the playoffs, maybe even the Super Bowl. You never know. But I think Josh Allen will have a chance at MVP, and I think the Bills are definitely contenders this season. Next team, we have Texans. They're 0-3, so right now they're pretenders, kind of. I think they'll definitely stay pretenders. I mean, their schedule is pretty tough. They have to play the Patriots. I think they'll lose that game. They have to play the Packers. They'll definitely lose that game, I think. And the Texans, they just don't have enough pieces. I don't think they'll be a good team this year at all. Next team, we have Steelers. This one's a bit tough. I think the Steelers, at some points, they'll look like pretenders. Some points, they'll look like contenders with their defense. I mean, their front seven is absolutely amazing. Their defense is absolutely crazy. You can't run on that defense. It's just a matter of, like, Big Ben stepping up. I think at some points they'll look good, some points they'll look bad. But I do have them as contenders for this season. I think they'll have an 11-5 record. But what do you think the Steelers will be this season? And the last team, or second to last team, we have Broncos. I think they're going to stay pretenders. They're also 0-3. I think if they didn't have as many injuries as they do, I think they can maybe turn to contenders with Drew Lock. But Drew Lock is still hurt. They're an injury-to-real team, like I said earlier. Jarrell Casey, Von Miller, Cortland Sutton, Drew Lock. That's their quarterback. I mean, so a lot of injuries on that team. I think the Broncos will have a terrible season this year. And the last team, Titans, if they even play again this season, I mean, you never know. They're the first team to get 3 positive tests for players, 3 for coaches. They're probably going to have to cancel the game this week, maybe the game next week. Maybe the whole NFL will have to shut down. I hope that does not happen at all. But I think if they do play, I think they will turn to pretenders, not contenders. I think the Titans, Ryan Tannehill, I sense vulnerability with him. I think the Titans, there's some pieces that are missing. Some players, they turn bad. I mean, sometimes they can be great. Sometimes they can be really bad. So I think the Titans, they do play. They will turn to pretenders. The Titans scare me a little bit. I sense vulnerability with them. And that's about it for sensing the pretenders and contenders. You leave in the comments section who your contenders are and who your pretenders are. But those are mine. Let's go to our Around the Bases segment now, where we talk about all the MLB news and a lot more. Juan Soto, a Washington Nationals player, is now officially the youngest player ever in MLB history to win the batting title. That's pretty impressive, I think. And the Miami Marlins, as I said earlier in the headlines, have officially made the playoffs. It's pretty crazy that the Marlins made the playoffs. They're projected to be one of the worst teams this season. Last season, they were one of the worst teams in MLB. It's kind of crazy. Hopefully they can build on this season for the future. Derek Jeter, the owner, said that this is just a stepping stone. They can maybe even win the World Series. I doubt that happens. I mean, the Nationals last season from that same division, nobody predicted them to make the playoffs, losing Bryce Harper in the offseason. They won the World Series. So, I mean, it's 2020. Anything could happen. But let's move over to our bold predictions for the MLB playoffs. Let's get right into it. At number 5, I have the Padres making the World Series. I think it could kind of happen. That might not be my World Series prediction, but I do think the Padres have a chance to make the World Series. Number 4, we have the Marlins making the NLCS, the champion. It's like the conference finals of the MLB, pretty much. If you don't know about the MLB playoffs rules and all that stuff, but I think the Marlins definitely could have a chance of making the NLCS. We'll just have to wait and see. But I think they go up against the Cubs in their first series. I'm not completely sure on that, but I'm pretty sure they play the Cubs. I think they could definitely have a chance to win that series. You never know. But that's number 4. And number 3, I think Aaron Judge will have 2 games in this series against the Indians where he has 2 home runs. The Indians pitching is it's not stellar. I think Aaron Judge will have a really good series, really good playoffs, and I think that the Yankees definitely have a chance to make the World Series. So I think he'll have 2 games where he hits 2 home runs. I mean, if that does happen, that'd be crazy. I think they have a chance to make the World Series with everybody being back healthy. Number 2, I think the Braves definitely have a shot to win it all. I mean, that's not my prediction. I think they definitely could have a chance to win it all. We'll have to wait and see. They're a great team. Ronald Acuna, their pitching is pretty good. But and Ozzie Albies, a bunch of pieces on that team. Freddie Freeman, every guy on that team. I think they could definitely have a shot to make the World Series. And at number 1, my bold prediction, and this is my World Series prediction, the Yankees win the World Series. Yes, I think the Yankees will win the World Series this year. Aaron Judge, I think Giancarlo Stanton, I think all those guys will have a great series. Gleyber Torres, everybody's back. Their pitching is back. Pitching is really good. I think the Yankees definitely will win the World Series this year. I'm 100% certain on that. I don't think you guys think the same thing. Leave down in the comment section who your MLB World Series prediction is. But that's mine, and that's my bold predictions for the MLB playoffs. Now let's move to college football and what's next for the teams that got upset and our college football picks for this week. Let's get right into it. The first team we're going to talk about, LSU. What's next for them after they got upset? They play 4 top 15 teams on their schedule. I pretty much have them losing all of those games except for the Texas A&M game. Texas A&M, they were a bit shaky to me, Kellen Mond this season, but I do think they can win that game. But all the other games against Florida, against Alabama, against Auburn, I think they're going to lose all of those games. So, I mean, that's pretty bad for LSU. I think they're going to have a pretty lackluster season. I think that losing to Mississippi State, and that pretty much proved that they're not a great team this year. I mean, they won the national championship last year, so if you're an LSU fan, I wouldn't be too sad. I mean, winning the national championship is the greatest thing, I mean, for a fan, pretty much. But I do think LSU, I don't think they'll have a great season at all. Miles Brennan threw 2 picks. He had a QBR of 32. That's absolutely atrocious. So I think Miles Brennan, he can maybe pick it up, but 2 picks and a QBR of 32 is not good at all, and I don't see LSU having a great season this year. Next team, Oklahoma. They lost to Kansas State, like I said in headlines. I mean, Oklahoma, I don't know what happened to them. I mean, I did not think they would lose to Kansas State. I even said in the last episode that they would blow out Kansas State, even though they lost to them the year before. This is 2 straight years where they lose to Kansas State. That's absolutely crazy, I think. Kansas State, I mean, they lost to Arkansas State week 1. This is a team that lost to Arkansas State, and now they're being the 3rd best team in the country. That's crazy to me. Spencer Rattler, I think his Heisman hopes are done. I think Oklahoma's playoffs hopes are done. I think they will lose to Texas and a bunch of other teams, and not a bunch of other teams, but I think they could lose 2 more games this season. So I think Oklahoma, I think their playoff hopes are now officially done. Now, some teams that were almost upset. Texas, how can they build on this? They almost lost to Texas Tech. I mean, emotions were high. I mean, it's a rivalry game. Sometimes rivalry games are really close, even if one team's like amazing and one team's really bad. But Texas Tech, you almost lose to a team like that, a team who almost lost to Houston Baptist in week 1. That's pretty bad for Texas. I still do have them making the playoff. I still do that. I have them making a great season, Texas. But I think that's pretty bad for them. I mean, I'm glad they were able to come back. They were down by 15. I think it was 56-41. That's really bad for Texas. But I'm glad they were able to come back. But Texas, they got to watch out for teams like that. Maybe they could get upset later in the season. Texas A&M, they almost lost to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, one of the worst teams in the country. That's really bad. And Kellen Mond, their quarterback, he's putting up game manager stats. Not good at all. I mean, their schedule is pretty tough. Next week, they play Alabama. The week after that, they play Florida. The week after that, they play Mississippi State. That's really tough. Those are all top 15 teams. That's really, really bad for Texas A&M, and I pretty much have them losing all those games. Maybe not the Mississippi State one. We'll have to see how they do the rest of their schedule over the next 2 weeks. But KJ Costello, I think he could definitely put up crazy stats against Texas A&M. So I think Texas A&M's in big trouble for the season. And if Kellen Mond keeps on putting up these game manager stats, I think that's really bad for them. Now let's go to our predictions. So our picks of the week, let's get right into it. The first game, South Carolina, Florida. Florida proved to me that they were an elite team last week. Their defense, it's a little bit shaky. Kyle Pitts, their tight end, had 4 touchdowns, and he's a tight end. That's absolutely crazy. Kyle Trask, their quarterback, put up 6 touchdowns, 450 yards. Similar to KJ Costello a little bit. Less yards than KJ Costello, but more touchdowns. I think Kyle Trask or KJ Costello, one of them will be the next Joe Burrow. I think it's going to be Kyle Trask, the next Joe Burrow. I think KJ Costello's stats will calm down a little bit. I think next week we'll probably throw for 300 yards. We'll just have to wait and see. But I think Florida is an elite team this year, and I have them being South Carolina big. Next game, TCU, Texas. It's another rivalry game. I think Texas, I don't think they're going to come close to losing this one. I don't think it would go to overtime like the Texas Tech game. I have Texas winning by 17 this one. Next game, Texas A&M, Alabama. Alabama, but closer than you think. I know I said Texas A&M's a pretty bad team, but I think they could try and trip them up a little bit. I still do have Alabama winning this game, though. Memphis, SMU. Shane Buechele, I think he'll get the job done over Memphis, and I think SMU will win this one. North Carolina, Boston College. Boston College has a really sneaky defense. Sam Howell threw a couple picks in week 1. I think he got sacked a couple of times. I think he needs to pick it up a bit because this is a really sneaky defense of Boston College. I think North Carolina needs to step it up, Sam Howell. But I do have North Carolina winning this one close. Oklahoma, Iowa State. Iowa State and Brock Purdy. I thought they were going to be a really good team this year. They lost to Louisiana in week 1. That was really bad for them. Louisiana's barely being group of 5 teams. They almost lost to Georgia Southern. They almost lost to Georgia State. They won a game-winning field goal against Georgia Southern last week. They went to overtime against Georgia State 2 weeks ago. So that's pretty bad that Iowa State lost to a team like that. And Brock Purdy, he did a really bad game against TCU. He didn't have a really bad game, but he did a kind of bad game against TCU. They still won, but Brock Purdy had a horrible pick 6. I don't know what he was doing on that play. One of the easiest pick 6s I've ever seen. So Brock Purdy and Iowa State, I think they'll lose this one. I think Oklahoma will get a bounce-back win. I think they'll win by a lot in this one. Now, the Auburn-Georgia game, the game of the week. I think Auburn will win this one. It's going to be a close game, I think. But the inconsistency at quarterback for Georgia, they started DeJuan Mathis last week. He had a really bad game. They benched him at halftime for Stetson Bennett. JT Daniels, the USC transfer, is now officially cleared to play. I don't think he'll play this week. I don't think he'll start. I think maybe next week they can start him, but I don't think he's ready yet. He's trying to still learn the playbook, some things like that. But I do think they can put him in for a couple snaps. Kirby Smart, I think he could put him for a couple snaps. Stetson Bennett, I think he'll have an okay game. But I do have Auburn winning this one close, though. But the reason is because Georgia has inconsistency at quarterback. Their defense was pretty good last week. They held Arkansas to under 20 points. Auburn's team is looking really good this year. Seth Williams had a crazy catch in week 1 against Kentucky. Bo Nix had a pretty good game. Their defense put up great numbers. So I do think Auburn will win this one, but close. And that's about it for our college football picks this week and news in college football. Leave your picks for college football in the comment section. Let's move over to fantasy football and my whole. Some players you can maybe pick up. Some players you could definitely drop. Some players had really good games. Some players had really bad games. These are some players you could definitely pick up who are still probably free agents in your league. First, Rex Burkhead. Rex Burkhead had 26 points last week. I had him on my team. He was a great pickup for me. He had 3 total touchdowns. I picked him up probably 10 minutes before the game started. That was a great choice. You should definitely pick up Rex Burkhead if he's still available in your league. He had 3 touchdowns, 26 points. That's absolutely great. I think you could definitely pick him up as a running back. Next, Justin Jefferson, the Minnesota Vikings wide receiver. He had 23 points. He's pretty much filling the need from Stephon Diggs leaving. I think he's he could maybe even be the new Stephon Diggs for Kirk Cousins for the Vikings. So I think he's pretty much wide receiver 2 now for them behind Adam Thielen. I think Jefferson had a great game last week. I think he could be a great pickup for you. I think he'll have great games this season. Next, Nick Foles. Nick Foles, he could definitely be the potential star for the rest of the season. He's announced the starter now for the rest of the season. Maybe that could change. But Nick Foles had a really good game last week. He had 23 points, and he didn't even play the whole game. He's definitely a guy you could pick up. Another guy you could pick up, Jeff Wilson Jr. or Jerick McKinnon, 2 running backs for the 49ers. It's a bit of a toss-up because one game they might go Jerick McKinnon. The whole time one game they might go Jeff Wilson Jr. I think Jeff Wilson Jr. is the guy you need to pick up over Jerick McKinnon. Raheem Mostert is out. Until he comes back, I think Jeff Wilson Jr. is the guy you need to pick up for your fantasy football team. Another guy, maybe Alan Lazard over Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I made a mistake. I was thinking of choosing Alan Lazard over Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I thought Aaron Rodgers would throw to Marquez Valdes-Scantling over Alan Lazard. I was wrong. He only threw to Marquez Valdes-Scantling one time. Alan Lazard got a bunch of points. He had over 100 yards. He had a great game. So you should definitely pick him up if he's still available in your league. Now here's some players you could definitely drop in your fantasy football league. 1, Mitchell Trubisky. He's pretty much an obvious one. I mean, he's not going to play the next week. Probably, he definitely won't play the next week. He probably won't play the week after that. He might not even play for the rest of the season. He might not even play for the rest of his career as a Chicago Bear. I mean, it's looking kind of likely if Nick Foles keeps up how he's playing. So I think you should definitely drop him if you still have him on your team. Next, Ryan Tannehill. I saw a lot of people still have Ryan Tannehill in their league. In my league, one guy started Ryan Tannehill. He only got him 10 points. That's really bad, 10 points. So I think Ryan Tannehill is been inconsistent. He's not elite, I don't think, at all. No, he's not a good fantasy football quarterback at all. He's not going to put up Patrick Mahomes numbers. He's not going to put up great numbers. He's kind of a quarterback, a player who will put up stats that are not on the box score. He'll put up stats that maybe, just stuff like that. So I think you need to drop Ryan Tannehill and Mitchell Trubisky if you still have them in your fantasy teams. That's about it for fantasy football today. Those are players you should pick up, players you should drop. That's my insight on it. Let's see how we do. Let's see if you pick them up and see how they do next week. Let's talk NFL quarterbacks now. Maybe we should, and I'll say if we should overreact about them or give it time. The first quarterback, Sam Darnold. I think it's a bit of a gray area here for me. I think you need to give him time. He's a really bad coach in Adam Gase. He's not really offensive-minded. I think they should have gone out and fired Adam Gase last season. Maybe they should have gone out and gone Eric Bieniemy, Chiefs offensive coordinator, Patriots offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels. They definitely should have gone after a new coach last season to help Sam Darnold. I think they should have gone after Stephon Diggs, or an elite wide receiver in free agency. I think they should have gone after Stephon Diggs, definitely. Now he's out their division rival, the Bills. They definitely need new pieces for Sam Darnold. He has no pieces now. He can make the plays. I've seen him make plays, but I think he needs more pieces. He has Le'Veon Bell, but he's just a running back. He's not a receiver. He's not really a receiving back. So I think what Sam Darnold needs is a new coach and some new pieces. But I think you don't need to overreact about Sam Darnold. I think you need to give him time. Next quarterback, Mitchell Trubisky. I'm going to say overreact here. I was thinking about saying give it time, but I think overreact now because I do think Nick Foles will have a pretty good season, and that's pretty much it for Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, he has a 6-3 ratio this season, 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Not horrendous. I don't think Matt Nagy should have pulled the plug on him and taken him out in that game. I think if he did play the rest of the game, they probably would have lost that game. But Nick Foles did get that comeback. I don't think he was playing bad enough to be taken out. But I do think you need to overreact a little bit on Mitchell Trubisky. If Nick Foles does have a good season, that's pretty much it for Mitchell Trubisky. I think Mitchell Trubisky, he could maybe find a new landing spot this offseason if they decide to trade him. But I do think Mitchell Trubisky, I think it's time to overreact on him. Former number 2 overall pick, had one good season, Pro Bowl. I mean, it pretty much seemed like last season was his only bad season in his rookie year, but I think it's time to overreact on Mitchell Trubisky. Next quarterback, Jared Goff. Let's give Jared Goff time. I think Jared Goff needs time. His first season with Sean McVay, absolutely amazing. They went to the wild card. Next season, he took them to the Super Bowl. Yes, the Super Bowl. They lost that Super Bowl, but Jared Goff, an amazing season. Last season, he had a really bad year. I mean, decent numbers, game manager numbers. I think he is a bit of a game manager, Jared Goff. I think he needs to develop into a better player, develop more skills. Maybe he needs to scramble a little bit more, I think, step in the pocket more. But Jared Goff, I think you need to give him time. He had one bad season last year. He's having a really good season this year to start it off. So I think Jared Goff, I think you need to give him time. I think this season he can maybe make the Pro Bowl. I mean, you never know. I think Jared Goff, you need to give him time. Next quarterback, Carson Wentz. I'm going to say you need to overreact on Carson Wentz. Here's why. I mean, he's 27 years old. That's kind of old. Not old for a quarterback, but, I mean, it seems like he's so young. I mean, it seems like he's in his third year of his career. No, he's 27 years old. And some elite quarterbacks when they were 27, most people think he will be elite. Like Tom Brady, when he was 27, he led his team to a 14-2 record. He was, putting up amazing numbers at 27. Same with Aaron Rodgers, same with all those guys. So I think Carson Wentz, it's time to overreact on him. He's having a really bad season this year. I think Doug Peterson, I think he will be fired after this offseason. The only good season Carson Wentz had was when Frank Reich was his offensive coordinator. He left to go be the coach of the Colts. A lot of people said maybe it was because of his injury. That's why he didn't play well. That's why he's not playing well, because he got injured the season he probably was going to win MVP. So I do think Carson Wentz, I think it's time to overreact on him. I think they need to get him a new coach, a new offensive coordinator, Doug Peterson. I think you need to get rid of him after this season. Yeah, Eagles fans, I don't know if you're happy about that, but I do think it's time to overreact on Carson Wentz. You can maybe get some pieces for him if you trade him, but I don't think anybody will take him. It's a $150 million contract. I don't think anybody wants to pick up a $150 million contract for a player of that caliber. That's about it for the quarterbacks who need to overreact or give it time. You leave your thoughts on that, and you can put in the comment section if you should overreact on Carson Wentz, underreact on Carson Wentz, give Jared Goff time, or overreact on him and the other quarterbacks. But that's about it for that today. The Tampa Bay Lightning are now officially the first team to ever win playing in a bubble. Tampa Bay Lightning won the Stanley Cup Finals this week. That's pretty crazy. They're the first team to ever win a championship in a bubble. It's pretty surprising that they won the bubble, going from Tampa Bay all the way up to Canada to win. It's pretty much like winning the finals, winning the Super Bowl, winning the Stanley Cup Final. It's a big thing. I'm glad they were able to get the job done. The Tampa Bay Lightning are 2020 NHL champions. Let's go over to this or that now. Today's this or that is NBA Finals edition, like who will have more points, who will get more rebounds, who will get more threes. The first one is who will get more points in this, who will average more points in this series, Jimmy Butler or Anthony Davis. I said earlier, Anthony Davis have a terrible series, so I do think Jimmy Butler will average more points in this series. Next one, which three-point duo will make more threes, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, or Kyle Kuzma and Danny Green. This one really isn't close at all. Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, they're maybe the best shooting duo in the NBA. I love Duncan Robinson. He was an elite shooter at Michigan. I watched him there. He was a great player there. Same with Tyler Hero at Kentucky. That's a dynamic duo, so I definitely think they would get a lot more threes in this series than Kyle Kuzma and Danny Green. Next one, who will get more rebounds in this series, Bam Adebayo or Dwight Howard? This is kind of a close one. Dwight Howard, obviously he had a really, really good conference final series against the Nuggets. He had a double-double in just his first game starting. I think that Dwight Howard will get more rebounds in this series. Bam Adebayo, he's an elite defending force. He's really good at defense, on defense, but I don't think he's as elite as a rebounder as Dwight Howard is. So I think Dwight Howard will get more boards in this series over Bam Adebayo. But I still do think Bam Adebayo will have a really good series. I think he can get a lot of points. He pretty much won Game 6 for them, as I said earlier, in the conference final series against the Celtics. But that's about it for this or that today. Leave your thoughts on that in the comment section. Now let's go to sports all around the world. Maybe some sports you're not familiar with. Maybe you are familiar with this sport. The UFC, there was a crazy fight on Saturday between Israel Adesanya and Paulo Costa for the championship. Israel Adesanya defended his belt. He's still the reigning champion. He beat Paulo Costa in the second round. He's still the champion of the middleweight division in the UFC, so congratulations to him. Now let's move to tennis, as the French Open has started. Dominic Thiem, who was the runner-up in the French Open last year, who won the U.S. Open this year just about a month ago, and he could have a shot at winning the French Open as the runner-up last year. But Rafael Nadal is looking like a candidate too to win the French Open, going for his 13th French Open. It's absolutely crazy. I think Dominic Thiem definitely has a chance to win this. Last year's finals was Rafael Nadal versus Dominic Thiem. That might happen this year again. But I do think Rafael Nadal will win the French Open. But the French Open is going on right now. The UFC fight on Saturday. That's pretty much it for Around the Sports and World. So maybe you weren't familiar with those sports, but that's the news. Let's move over to the question of the day now. Who do you think deserves to be the Bears starting quarterback, Mitchell Trubisky or Nick Foles? I think Mitchell Trubisky does not deserve to be the starting quarterback for the Bears. I think Nick Foles proved himself a little bit against the Falcons. I still don't think Mitchell Trubisky deserved to be benched in that game. But Nick Foles, the way he played in that game was absolutely amazing. I don't blame Matt Nagy for making him the starter this week. That's about it for Schoolyard Sports with Lane Frigg this week. So don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review.